の場合を iPhone
This internet thing may actually catch on.
すごくアクティブな講義をしてくださる。はい、じゃあ。
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, kitten videos are good. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I am so excited. Actually, I'm not really here to talk. I'm here to listen to Bo Edgar. I always learn things from him. You're in for a real treat with his presentation. Can I ask you a question? Are you an entrepreneur? How many of you think you're an entrepreneur? In your heart? People like, heart, head. Who is not an entrepreneur in this room? Who of you are still asleep? Okay. Well, by the time we're done, I think you're going to feel good about thinking you're an entrepreneur. So, I have the magic clicker that I have not practiced with, so. And this is oh, I gave it this. Cool. Okay. Ooh. For someone who once studied physics, I'm really bad at these things. The real question here that Bo and I want to talk about is, ultimately, it's about how do we help grow a more entrepreneurial Japan. That the statistics that Dr. Taji had presented are a little scary. But we're here to say that's fixable. And there are a lot of great things happening here in Japan that those numbers are going to get better and better. This is track me down if I can ask any questions that can ever be helpful. My job ultimately is this question: how do we make a more entrepreneurial Japan? How do we make it a more entrepreneurial world? There are two things that you need. One is to grow the entrepreneurial mindset in more and more people, not just entrepreneurs, but everyone. We want your mom, your mother to think she's entrepreneurial. Civic leaders, and we're going to have some examples of civic leaders in this country like Rishi, who are really good. They really get it. That's important. The other piece is growing the ecosystem, growing the entrepreneurial community, and those are deeply intertangled, but we're going to focus here on mindset. When we talk about the mindset, there are really three questions. One, what is the mindset? People research it, they talk about it, and they never define it. Second, how do you measure it? And if you haven't defined it rigorously, how can you really assess the impact? Are we moving the needle? And third, how do we make that happen? How do we move the needle? That we're not just learning about entrepreneurship to thinking and acting like an entrepreneur. And that's something that excites me, gets me up in the morning excited. One of the things you easily learn is that as a researcher, this is a graph of all sorts of different things that relate to how human beings learn. There are all these theoretical frameworks and practical frameworks, and virtually none of them exist in entrepreneurship, education, research. We're trying to work that. You guys have that memorized yet? There'll be a test later. I think Shoko is doing my jokes in advance. But anyway, thank you to Shoko and Aki for doing the translation. That translating from English to Japanese is hard enough, but translating from Norris to English is even harder. This is exciting. That everyone says, oh, we are not learning about entrepreneurship anymore, we're teaching people how to be entrepreneurial. Everyone says it, and very few people are really doing that. But it's happening, it's growing. And it's growing in the academic world, it's growing in the practical world. It is nothing less than the kind of revolution that Copernicus brought to the world. This is exciting because there's a lot of turbulence, a lot of disruption. I have many people angry with me online. Well, on Facebook, everybody's always angry, but I think I'm right. I think we are right. So how do we do this? How do we move forward? I'm very interested in the questions you're going to have because I think that this is not about me talking to you, but us ultimately having a conversation. And we'll have time later for Bo and I to talk with you. What do the best programs in the world do? They build the mindset. They engage deeply with the ecosystem to do that. There are many great programs. You're going to hear about what they're doing in Sweden. But if you look at everything from Startup Weekend to what Y Combinator and Techstars are doing, they're doing exactly what this. In the spirit of being rigorous, 3 key premises. 1, but we were talking about the mindset isn't stuff you know, it's that deep cognitive stuff that is what we're really changing. We are changing people at a deep cognitive level, not just what they know, but how they know it. The only way to change deep cognitive beliefs is through transformative learning. These are experiential. And one thing that I found very useful is the notion of going from how does a novice think to how does an expert think. I know it's not really 10,000 hours, but what changes and what causes those changes is really important. Constructivism is replacing behaviorism. That learning is not about filling up your brain with stuff. It is about changing how you see the world. Hard to measure, at least to measure skillfully. But we're starting to get there. And for instance, you just heard that a good pre-post study was just done here at Hosei and Future. A lot of problems. Yes, research in entrepreneurship education is, in Japanese, how do you say totally dreadful? That there's not a lot of theory, but there's theory out there that we can and should be using. So one way to organize this is inputs, outputs, and outputs. So it turns out that what is it that if we're changing the mindset, what is it? How do we get to a rigorous definition? From a research perspective, this is important. It is even more important in the practical world. How do we measure it? Do we develop some sort of research protocol can we do that? That's a problem. Nice thing is we're seeing in the world an evolution of education. It used to be, in English we say, the sage on the stage. That I give a talk and you listen and you write everything down and memorize it and that's good. We've now evolved to where the focusing has been on learner and on learning. Focusing, what are we changing? Because in the greater education world, we're going in the right direction. At the throughput, how experiential? Aki and Shoko said I should explain that word. So what we're talking about is it changing you? Experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. How is it changing you? Just having real-world exercises is good, but universities and communities need to find opportunities that go beyond the hands-on and become truly transformative. From a research perspective, there are interesting things we need to control for. From a practical perspective, the same way. Now we get to some tricky parts. This is one that gets us all in a lot of trouble because one thing we learned, I had the great fortune to work with the OECD on their Entrepreneurship 360 primary and secondary students. I saw 26 primary and secondary school entrepreneurship programs that were brilliant. One thing you have in primary and secondary school is you have teachers. You have real teachers, professionally trained teachers. Not many business school professors get training in education. I've gone through the certification training and I know how important that is. It's also, that the audience you have when we're studying this is taking into consideration, do we work with the students, with learners who are already entrepreneurial, and then there's a very different training process than people who are brand new to this. And we always need to be focusing on how we get there. Sort of recapping this, we're learning about entrepreneurship and content now. That's important, yes, but if you want to change someone, if you want to move from novice to expert, you can't get from novice to expert just by learning things. You need that experiential learning, that deep cognitive change to get there. And this is, again, we're talking about some fairly deep assumptions. William Butler Yeats is a famous Irish poet who said, favorite thing he ever said was, learning is not filling a bucket. It is lighting a fire. And that's true in anything, not just the classroom. How many of you are lighting a fire when you work with people? And people are like, How many are just filling buckets? Oh good, no hand, that's good. One of the things we discover as we go through it, there is so much for us to learn out there from the education world, from the training world, that I think we're going to have a chance of moving forward. We still have that problem of what is this is. So, in any setting, this is not just in classroom, in a corporate training, in any setting you're in. There are some things that are, if you want to do transformative learning, this is what we've learned is powerful. Oops. Authentic means it's a question that matters to the person learning. If you work on a problem that matters to you and matters to others, it's almost like doubling your IQ. This is why this experiential, the project-based and problem-based learning is so powerful. Because you're tapping into something at a very deep level. Great learning is not done in isolation. There is all sorts of co-learning going on. I learn as much from students as they learn from me. It's marvelous. There are times I feel like I'm stealing. I'm just learning so much. There are some things that most don't happen in most classroom settings is putting an emphasis on everyone stepping back and thinking about what they did. What are you doing? What have I learned? How have I changed? That you need peer support. Peer mentoring. Learning from your peers is incredibly powerful. And expert mentoring. How many people here play chess? Anybody play chess? They told me everybody played chess.
Shogi in Japan.
Oh, shogi! Shogi, that if you want to be a chess master, you almost certainly need another chess master to help you get there. That you need this kind of people who actually get it, who really understand this entrepreneurial mindset, is a big help. And ultimately means being deeply immersed in the experience. Oh, by the way, that school teacher, having a real school teacher is a big help, because you need to have someone in charge who actually understands all of this. And you're very blessed with some great educators that are in this room who really get it and are definitely skilled facilitators. The other thing is getting every great entrepreneurial learning program that's out there in the world is deeply, not only immersed in the ecosystem, the community, the entrepreneurial community is part of your community. And you're going to hear about what they've been doing in Gothenburg that makes me terribly envious and want to move there. This notion of problem-based learning, you may have heard of. Project-based learning is a similar concept. Again, it's all about immersion, learning through action, mentoring, making sure you take away the right lessons from what you've learned. These are all very simple things, but it seems very hard to implement in practice. And it is also important, again, that being co-embedded in the community. How many of you had talked to an entrepreneur this week? Well, most of you raised your hands and you said you were an entrepreneur. Did you talk to yourself today? That I do that often. I actually argue with myself, which is probably not good. But the more that you are out there in the entrepreneurial community yourself, even if you're not an educator, you're an administrator, or you're whatever you're doing, the more you talk to it. And it seems very clear that the government of Japan has been very good at, the Ministry of Industry and Trade has been very good at interacting deeply with entrepreneurs. There are a lot of things in the entrepreneurial education world that matter. This is it. In terms of educational research, the one thing that's really important is, with the right support, action will change how you think. Yes, how you think affects how you act, but how you behave affects how you think. That, again, it's all about deep stuff. And one concept I'd like to make sure you is this notion of in life there are critical experiences you have that change you. And we're starting to get a good handle on what are these critical development exercises, activities that change you in a more entrepreneurial figure. I always like to talk about ecosystems. How many of you have read this book, Fred Builds Startup Communities? Go buy it, it's $10 on Amazon. Great book, written by a serial entrepreneur and venture capitalist about what makes a truly entrepreneurial community. Great stuff. I was brought here because of this model. Isn't that exciting? That studying entrepreneurial intentions and applying what we sort of know the model works with, this is what led me to understand that it's the stuff that happens deeply. Those deep cognitive structures are so important. And then how do we change them? And how do we measure them? If you want to be a novice, to turn a novice into an expert, you have to give them let them experience the right things that move them in that direction. This is a very scary thing. This is where addressing these authentic questions that matter is so important. But it's very scary in a lot of institutional settings. This is the fancier version of it. That what we know will change as you go from novice to expert. But if you're going to change the mindset, what's really important is changing not the knowledge content, but how you structure knowledge in your brain. There are these deep beliefs, these deep knowledge that anchor these knowledge structures, and the only way to change them is these deep experiential exercises, these activities that we do in entrepreneurship education. It is very exciting to think that entrepreneurship education, in many ways, is a thought leader in transformative education. We've been doing this for decades. There is a economist joke that goes, well, yes, it works in the real world, but does it work in theory? Our stuff works in theory. Anyway, a quick scan of the literature. There are a bunch of things. What are the facets of this entrepreneurial mindset? There are a lot of things. These are things that various people have suggested. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on that. It shows that there's not a lot of consensus on what the entrepreneurial mindset is. But these are all things that kind of make sense in terms of that. If this were normal, and sometimes if I give this talk, I ask people in the audience to say, what are the facets? How would you know someone had the entrepreneurial mindset? And this list tends to show up. Some of them are easy to change, some are very hard to change. There's a lot of, as even, in great entrepreneurship education, are we doing some bad things to their knowledge structure? One of the things that we're working on now, and I think is very exciting, is if there are these different facets, different elements of the entrepreneurial mindset, what activities change each one of them, as opposed to changing all of them? That's, I think, something in the education research literature is very important. Which means, okay, here's a desired outcome. We want you to be more resilient to adversity. Okay, what kind of exercise changes that? What would that be? There are a lot of things that I think are important to take away, but I'm going to focus on, this is the basic. You're going to teach, you're going to do training, make sure it's constructivistic. Make sure that that you're mindful about this entrepreneurial thinking, expert entrepreneurial thinking. You get at those deep beliefs. And I would argue that you need instructors, you need mentors who at least understand, if not share, the expert mindset. From a policy perspective, the big one is try to only promote educational activities that are truly mindset building. Focus on that because that's the biggest leverage you'll have in your community. Same thing. Or identify the people who get it, who understand the expert mindset, understand how real entrepreneurs, how successful entrepreneurs think. And for entrepreneurs, when I talk about this to an entrepreneurial audience, they're very excited because they understand, they want to know how they can get better. Even people who clearly have the expert mindset. Little secret. What's the best way to know someone's an expert and not a novice? They still think they need to learn more. A lot more. We have a great audience here that thinks that way. Again, here's my contact information. Where are we on time? I don't see the time sign.
Time sign. 3 minutes left.
Oh, I have 3 minutes. So I didn't get the 10 minutes to shut up, Norris. That you have a form in your packet for asking questions. But since we have 3 minutes, do any of you have a burning question right now? You're not even going to ask about the red shoes? Entrepreneurial red. I've made a convert of Shingo on this. That it's now become kind of my trademark, and the fact they're very comfortable doesn't hurt. So let me ask again. How many of you feel like you think at least a little bit like an entrepreneur? How many feel like you feel more like an entrepreneur now? How many have I scared off? Okay, can I do something very un-Japanese? Could you all stand up? And forgive me because I don't know how to say this in Japanese. But could you repeat after me? I am an entrepreneur. Okay, louder. I am an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. I am a Japanese entrepreneur. Yeah, it's hard to say. But if I had an MRI or an EEG connected to your brain, it would be lit up like Christmas lights. And I guarantee, if you say that every day, you will think more entrepreneurial. It's crazy, but anyway, I'm an entrepreneur from Boise, Idaho. I may be, yes, a renowned scholar and policy expert and great educator, lots of awards, but it's in here and in here, I am an entrepreneur, and I am here to serve you. Thank you very much.
You have plenty of time that is awesome. Yes.
It was fun doing this with German bureaucrats. They were like, and eventually 2 of them, the most serious ones, were on their chairs yelling. And both of them left the German government and started businesses, so I like causing trouble. Anyway, and now you can get the real speaker.
ありがとうございます。で、クエスチョンなんですけど、質問のシートが入ってますので、水色とピンク。それに書いていただいて、休み時間に回収させていただき、いくつかピックアップして、パネルの時にお答えするというふうにしたいと思います。
I like frightening the audience.
はい、じゃあ、Let me explain introducing your profile ですね。ブーさんは、スウェーデンのヨーテボリっていうのが多分スウェーデン語で、英語ではゴーセンバーグと言いますけども、ゴーセンバーグからもいらっしゃいました。で、どういうんでしょう。